Hello guys, welcome back. So today I am going to repurpose this broken shutter. I used my saw to cut the edges of the shutter and then the middle pieces of wood just fall right off. So I'm going to start off by creating some herb garden stakes. I'm using my stamps from IOD letterpress. I'm going to go ahead and stamp on some herbs, basil, oregano, cilantro. So just if you do decide to do this, just pick whatever herbs you want to put on your stakes. I went ahead and cut the corners of the bottoms off with my jigsaw. I did not do them all the same. I just kind of freehanded it to make my pointed bottom. So while I was creating these, I did make quite a few of them. I think from what I counted, I made about 63 of them. So I just did like a little assembly line, and you will see here that I'm going to stamp on the word oregano without the O, and then I'm going to go back and add the O at the end. This is just how I find it to be the easiest way to do this. Then I did take them outside and sealed them with some clear spray paint since these may be outdoor. And that is it for this one. Super simple. Let me know what you think. Next up, I have a couple of these frames that didn't have backs. I got them from the Goodwill bins. So I'm going to go ahead and cut my pieces of wood to the size of the back of my frame to create a backing. So the easiest way to cut these would have been a saw, but my husband wasn't home this morning and I just did not feel like carrying the miter saw outside. So I'm just using this knife that I had in my craft room. It was actually pretty easy, just going over it a couple times from the front and the back, and then it kind of snaps right into two pieces. So if you wanted to sand this down, you could, but I just faced it down on my frame. Cutting these in half fit perfectly into this frame. I didn't have to cut separate ones. I was making two at the time, so the other half of my wood piece fit onto my other frame. So it was a perfect size. So I'm going to add a little hot glue to the edges, and I'm going to go ahead and glue them down. And of course, if you wanted to, you could add some nails from the back to secure it even further. But this is just a decor piece, so I figured this would be okay. And then some of my glue seeped out from the front, so I'm just using these little scissors and I'm going to cut that glue off, only because these are going in my booth. So I don't really like for glue to be gooping out of places. So that's what I am doing here. So I am going to be using an IOD transfer out of this booklet. I really love this book. Hopefully I can find it again once I run out. So since I am going to be putting a little bit of pressure on my little wood pieces in my frame, I did put another piece of wood underneath so my little wood pieces don't pop off. So just to give me some workspace, I just cut the edges off of my transfer here just to give me a little bit of space to be able to rub my transfer on. So using the little tool that comes with the transfers, I'm going to go ahead and start giving it a little bit of pressure so I can transfer it onto my frame. So since this wood did have a little spaces in between, I did use the same tool and just kind of pushed it into those little creases. And then I used my sanding block just to distress my transfer a bit. Although here I decided to also sand down my frame, it just seemed a little on the rough side. So that is what I'm doing here. Then I decided that I want to give this a chippy look, so I go ahead and add a little bit of salt wash to some paint. And I am using Waverly chalk paint in the color Snow White, and just adding a little bit of salt wash. Then I use a plastic knife to kind of mix it up, and with that same plastic knife I'm going to also add the paint to my frame. So as I mentioned before, this frame does have a lot of texture, so I go ahead and spread my paint on, and it is just catching on all that texture. that this frame has, and it's just giving it a very, very chippy look, which is what I was going for. I go ahead and do this all the way around the frame and on the inside, and then I just give it a coat of spray paint to seal it all in, and that is it for this one, and here is the end result. And lastly, I'm gonna create a scroll using this fabric and more of those little wood pieces. I make several mistakes in this one, but I go ahead and leave them in just so you don't do the same mistakes if you decide to recreate these. So this paper here is, from what I read on the book, is watercolor paper. I picked it up at Dollar Tree, and I do want it to fit my fabric here, so I go ahead and cut my fabric according to the paper. So my idea was to use this little bunny that I created last year out of the same paper. I used the IOD stamps. I want to go ahead and pin it to the little fabric just to create a little scroll. I'm going to go ahead and iron out my fabric since it does have a couple wrinkles. So to create the scroll, I'm going to go ahead and glue my fabric in between these two pieces. So for the top, it's going to be the same thing, gluing my fabric between my little wood pieces, but I'm going to add my little hanger in between the two pieces of wood just to give it a cleaner look. I was going to use this fabric as a hanger, but I decided on the jute. So here I'm just going to add some hot glue to this piece of wood, and then I'm going to add my little hanger and then stick it onto my fabric. And I do go in and add a little bit more glue underneath my fabric just to be sure that my hangers don't come undone. Then I'm going to go ahead and add my other piece right on top. So to create my little paper that's going to go on my scroll, I'm going to go ahead and stamp on this little bunny from IOD. So this watercolor paper is textured and it's on the thicker side, so I feel like it'll hold up well. So then I'm going to use the Wreath Builder Classic, I believe this is called, and I'm just going to run it all the way across on top and bottom, just like I did with the other one that I made last year. Okay guys, so I am no watercolor expert, so this is just me winging it and doing what I think is how you do it. I really like the look of this, and it doesn't really cover up like the whole stamp. So this is just how I did it and created that look. So I basically dip my paintbrush into my water and then I put it into the paint, and then I began to paint my bunny. These paints that I'm using I picked up at Walmart. I think they were like $5 or $10. They were not expensive at all. I really wanted to learn, so I was like, I'm gonna give it a try, and that's what I did. And I really do like how it came out, but I don't know if this is the correct way to do it, but I don't know. You guys let me know what you think. I really do like it. And as always, just to give it that aged look, I did use my Distress Oxide on the edges of my paper. And then I'm going to use these stamps from Hobby Lobby. I'm going to stamp on the words Hippity Hop on top and the bottom. And I make a mistake here, and you will see how I fix it. So I wanted to cut this part out, but mistakes happen to everyone. And at the end of the day, it's not a big deal. There's always a way to fix it. So as you will see, I'm gonna put a Y instead of a T, and I pretty much freak out. So as I realize that I spelled it wrong, I continue on with the rest of my letters, and then in the meanwhile, I'm thinking, how am I gonna fix this? So I do end up getting some Waverly chalk paint and just kind of dabbing it over the Y to cover it up. It did take 2 coats to cover up that Y, and then I just stamped right over that, and I think it came out okay. I do end up using some of the Distress Oxide to kind of blend in that white, and then in the end I feel like it worked out. So to attach my paper to my fabric, I do end up using these little push pins from Hobby Lobby. I make the hole first with a needle, and then I stick the little tool from Dollar Tree to make the hole bigger, and then I push my pin through, and that is how I attach my paper. At first, I did on the top ones, I did the hole with the hole puncher, and that was way too big. So this way worked better. So guys, that is it for my video today. If you like what you see, please subscribe and follow for more. Follow me on Instagram and TikTok, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.